welcome back to Manna Reads. If this is the first time you're finding my channel, welcome. I hope you enjoy your stay here and I hope you enjoy my content. So what I do basically is I read Heaven's Official Blessing every Thursday. And yeah, so now we're pretty far into the novel. We have about, like, just as progress goes, I don't know if you can see that maybe. As progress goes, we're about like this much into it. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's kind of, we're getting there. So basically chapter 4, we're reading Mountain Locked Ancient Temple. So we've discovered that the female ghost, Yao Ying, no, sorry. I'm sorry, I'm all discombobulated. Wan Yi is causing a lot of trouble. She's a jilted person because I'm not sure what happened, but she's a jilted person who feels very strongly about a certain general. And so she's the one that's been kind of terrorizing the villagers and, basically killing like all the brides that she sees. So she's been kind of wreaking a lot of havoc on Mount Yuyin. So we're gonna see what happens to her, and we're gonna see how the situation resolves itself, and hopefully everything can turn out well. And I hope you like this video. So we're just gonna get to it today, and yes. Zilun felt everything he thought of was rather vulgar. However, when Wan Yi was having such profound resentment to the point where she was harming innocent lives, as vulgar as it was, Zilun could only force himself to think in that direction. Just then the sound of a girl screaming suddenly came from outside the temple. "Help! Help!" Zilun and Wan Yi both looked out the window at the same time, where Ro Yi had formed the white circle. A man was trying to drag that bandaged boy out, while Yao Ying clung to the man's leg, not letting go. The man started yelling curses. It was Yao Pengtao. "Fuck off, you dumbass! What if you call that female ghost over?" Yao Ying shouted. "If she comes, she comes. You're scarier than any ghost. I'd rather see a female ghost instead." Turned out that Yao Pengtao, who Zilun had knocked out with one whip of his silk band, had come too. When he saw the sluggishly fumbling brides all around, he first jumped in surprise, but soon realized that none of them could detect humans. He was exceedingly gutsy, hot-headed, and foolhardy, and planned to drag the bandaged boy down the mountain to collect his bounty. While no one else dared to move, he didn't care at all whether or not this boy was really the ghost groom. Everyone down the mountain said he was, so he was. Yet unexpectedly, Yao Ying pounced over, screaming and shouting, alerting all the drifting brides in the surrounding areas, including Wan Yi inside the temple of Minwang. Zilun saw that it was him again and mentally grumbled that he should have whipped harder earlier. Best for the man was whipped so hard he didn't wake for 3 days and 3 nights. He shouted, "Go back to the circle!" Yao Pengtao saw that the stream of black mist had come lunging at him, and hastily retreated. However, the bandaged boy was still in his grip, and Yao Ying was still clinging onto his leg. So in the end, he was still too slow by a beat. Instantly, the black mist enveloped him, and he was then sucked back to Wan Yi's hands. He turned his head to look. Wasn't this the disheveled, long-haired, haunting, chilling woman, the beautiful corpse he had touched among all those brides lying on the ground earlier? It wasn't until that moment he finally learned what fear meant. He shrieked at the top of his lungs, while Wan Yi curled her 5 fingers, digging them deep into the back of his head. In an instant, his skull was pulled out through the heavy layer of flesh on his scalp. The skull that was just pulled out was still steaming hot. its mouth still open wide and screaming. Ah! The people within the circle also had their mouths open wide and screaming, so terrified that their souls had left their bodies. Yao Ying was thoroughly terrified, pulling the bandaged boy into the circle as she screamed. Wan Yi reached her fingers out at them again, but Zilan dashed over and blocked her. General, please refrain from committing further murderous sins. He called her General in hopes of reminding her that she was once a heroine who fought bravely on the front lines to protect her kingdom. Yet Wan Yi crushed the head that was screaming in terror in her grip, that gorgeous face now 7 parts twisted. She sneered. Is he too scared to see me? Zilan couldn't think of any other way, so he wondered if he should pretend to be someone sent by General Pei to smooth things over first. But Wan Yi didn't need his response at all. She laughed heartily and whipped around, pointing at the divine statue. I burned your temples and caused havoc in your land, just so you'd come to take a look at me. I've waited for you for years. She stared at the martial god statue in a long trance, then suddenly leapt up, strangling its neck and shaking it like mad. But you still won't come to see me. Is it because you know you wronged me? Won't you look at my legs? Look at how I am now. This is all for you. For you. Is your heart made of iron? As a bystander, Zilan didn't want to comment on who was right or wrong. But in his opinion, he really couldn't help but think, if you wanted to see him, could you not have used the saner method? In any case, if someone did all this because they wanted to see me, I would have zero desire to show up. On the other end, Yao Ying and that bandaged boy finally returned to the circle anew. Looking his way, she whispered in concern, Young master. Hearing her, Zilan gave a small smile, indicating that she needn't worry. Yet unexpectedly, the moment he smiled, Wan Yi's face instantly contorted, and she lunged over from the divine statue. Since you won't look at me, and prefer to look at those girls who love smiling, I'll let you look at your own heart's content. Although the one she was strangling was Zilan, her words were directed at General Pei. At first, Zilan had thought that Wan Yi's heart was full of jealousy for those happy, smiling brides in their sedans, because she herself couldn't marry the one she loved. He hadn't expected that it was because this General Pei liked girls who smiled, so she, in her distorted mind, connected that to brides who were about to marry their lovers. No wonder she burned all Min Wan's temples around the mountain, now that he thought about it. It was probably because she couldn't stand having to share this one divine statue with all those women who'd visit Min Wan temples day in and day out. This female ghost was indeed a wrath, even with both legs broken. Her movements were fast as the devil's, and even before being beaten by Rui, her strength was still formidable. Zilan couldn't keep going with her strangling him like this. But just as he was about to summon Rui, there was a loud cry. Ah! That girl, Yao Ying, saw that he couldn't hang on anymore, so she picked up a branch and came charging over. She was yelling as she charged, seeming to jump up courage for herself. But Zilan didn't even need to lift. Wan Yi didn't even need to lift a finger. She only gave a chilling look. And before Yao Ying had even gotten close, she was sent flying meters away and crashed heavily onto the ground head first. The bandaged boy croaked out aloud, "Ah!" He ran over. Zilan was shocked too. But right as he sat up, he felt a chill on the back of his head. Wan Yi's fingers were already in place, going to yank his skull from his skin, just like earlier. In a dire situation, Zilan's right hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. He shouted, "Bind!" A sharp whoosh sound echoed through the air, and the white silk bandage heeded the command, circling and twisting about. Wan Yi trussing her up. Wan Yi's legs were broken, and so she couldn't dodge in time. Thus, with a heavy thud, she fell to her knees and started rolling on the ground, trying to break free of the white silk band. Yet the more she struggled, the tighter the bandings became. The instant he was set free, Zilin didn't even take a moment to catch his breath before he immediately got to his feet and ran to where Yao Ying had landed. Even with Ruoyi having been recalled, most of the crowd still didn't dare to move rashly. There were still a number of daring villagers who had gotten used to those fumbling brides and went circling. The bandaged boy was kneeling next to Yao Ying's sprawled form, not knowing what to do. So anxious, he was like a small insect on the rim of a boiling pot. No one dared touch her, afraid that she had broken something critical, and if she should struggle, the injury would worsen. Zilin gave a quick once-over and knew that no matter how careful he was, it was pointless. There was no way she'd survive after such a fall. While he hadn't interacted much with this girl Yao Ying, hadn't even spoken with her much, Zilin knew that she was a kind-hearted girl, despite her ugly appearance. Such an ending for her truly made the heart heavy. At least Wang Yi shouldn't be able to struggle free of Ruyi, Zilin thought. Even if it's pointless, Yao Ying shouldn't be left in this position right before her death. And so he very carefully flipped her over. Yao Ying's face was covered in blood. The crowd around clicked their tongues and sighed as they watched. However, she still had breath left and she whispered, "Young master, have I made things worse?" Although she didn't make anything worse, she actually didn't help either. Zilin was already going to summon Rui at the time and didn't require anyone's help. Besides, with that single branch of hers, even if she had managed to hit Wang Yi, it wouldn't have done anything. Never mind that she wouldn't have been able to get near the female ghost's body in the first place. With all that, this could be said to be a completely meaningless death. Zilin answered, "No, you were a great help. You see, the moment you came over, the female ghost's attention was diverted, which was how I had a chance to subdue her. Thank you very much. But you can't do that again next time, all right? If you're going to help, you have to tell me first. Otherwise, if I don't pick up on it, things will go downhill fast." Yao Ying chuckled. "Young master, you don't need to comfort me anymore. I know I wasn't any help, and there won't be a next time." Her words were jumbled and unclear, and when she spat out a mouthful of blood, there were even a few broken front teeth mixed in. That bandaged boy was shaking with panic, trying to speak. Yao Ying turned to him. "In the future, don't go down the mountain to steal food anymore. If you're discovered, you'll be beaten to death. If he's ever hungry, he can come to me," Zilin said. Yao Ying's eyes lit up hearing this. "Really? Then thanks so much." She smiled and smiled until suddenly 2 lines of tears streamed down from that pair of tiny eyes. She whispered, "I feel like I haven't lived through many good days in all my life here in this world." Zilin didn't know what to say, so he gently patted her hand. Yao Ying then sighed. "Never mind. Maybe I'm just born unlucky." Her jumbled words suddenly did sound a bit odd. With a bent nose and slanted eyes, and an appearance so ugly it was silly, her bloody, tear-streaked face was almost too funny to behold. With tears still rolling down, she choked, but even, I still..." Her breathing stopped, and she passed with those words. The bandaged boy saw that she died and started to weep quietly while hugging her body. His face was buried in her belly, like he had lost his only pillar of support and didn't dare raise his hand, no matter what. As for Zilin, he reached out and helped close her eyes. He spoke to her mentally, "You're stronger than me." Right then, the sound of a bizarre bell tolled. 3 booming tolls, and all of a sudden, Zilin felt his ankle dizzy. He wondered out loud, "What's going on?" Then he looked all around. All the brides had collapsed to the ground. Only their arms were still up and reaching toward the sky. The crowd of villagers also had slumped, as if they were all knocked out by the sound of deafening bells. Zilan himself felt his head become rather heavy, and though he forced himself to stand, with his hand supporting his forehead, his legs went weak and he fell to one knee on the ground. Fortunately, someone helped support him. When Zilan looked up, it was Nanfang. Turned out, the moment those 7 brides entered the forest, they immediately spread out. Nanfang had run over almost all the entirety of Mount Yuyan before he managed to capture all of them, and he had just returned. Seeing them quite calm, Zilan immediately asked, "What's with the bell?" "Don't worry, it's reinforcements," Nanfang replied. Zilan looked over, following his gaze. Only then did he notice that, before the temple of Minwang, a row of soldiers had appeared, standing there since who knew when. These soldiers were outfitted in armor, emitting sharp and awe-inspiring auras, and their bodies were enveloped in a thin sheen of spiritual light. In front of the soldiers there stood a poised, elegant, and tall young military general, obviously not a mortal. That military general approached with his hands clasped behind his back, and came before Zilan, bending slightly at the waist, giving a quick bow. "Your Highness?" Zilan hadn't yet opened his mouth to make inquiries before Nanfang whispered to him, "This is General Pei." Zilan instantly took a glance at Wan Yi, who was on the ground. General Pei? This General Pei didn't quite match what he had imagined, and was also grossly different from the divine statues. Heroic form was vivacious, its eyes spirited and energetic, with a handsomeness that was aggressive and invasive. While this young military general was also handsome, his complexion was pale, and his countenance was as calm as cool jade. There was no sense of murderous aura, only an unrippled tranquility. He was a military general, but he could also said to be a tactician. General Pei noticed that Wan Yi on the ground and spoke. "The palace of Linwen informed us that this incident of Mount Yuyan might be related to the palace of Minwang, and so this servant has come. I didn't expect that it really did have something to do with us. We have troubled your highness." Zilan thanked Linwen mentally. He wondered, how in the world was the palace of Linwen inefficient? He replied, "General Pei is working hard too." Wan Yi, who was still vaguely struggling, heard the words General Pei and suddenly looked up. She demanded enthusiastically, "Pei dear, is that you? Have you come? Have you finally come?" She was bound by Rui, and as overjoyed as she was, she could only rise into a knee. Yet unexpectedly, her face immediately blanched the moment she saw the military general. "Who are you?" On this end, Zilan had already given Nanfang a general account of what the Ghost Scrim affair was about. When he heard her, he wondered, "Isn't this General Pei? Could she have waited for too long and doesn't recognize him anymore?" "This is General Pei," Nanfang answered, "but it's not the one she's waiting for." Zilan was confused. "There are 2 General Peis?" And yet Nanfang replied, "That's correct. There are indeed 2 of them." Turned out the General Pei this female ghost Wan Yi was waiting for was the main god of the temple of Minwang. The one before them now was the deputy god of the palace of Minwang, a descendant of the senior General Pei. In order to differentiate the 2, everyone addressed this one as General Pei Jr. In legitimate Minwang temples, both must be worshipped, one facing the front and one facing the back. General Pei was the principal god of the main hall. So his divine statue faced the entrance of the temple hall, whereas General Pei Jr.'s divine statue was set up behind. Well, he was of a later generation than his ancestor. By looks, they appeared no different than brothers. 2 ascendees from one household was certainly considered a beautiful tale. Wan Yi scanned the area and didn't see the one she wanted to see. Among the soldiers either, she cried bitterly. Where is Pei Ming? Why hasn't he come? Why won't he come see me? General Pei Jr. inclined his head and replied, General Pei has important business to attend to. Wan Yi muttered, important business. Tears streamed beneath the long hair draping over her face. I've waited for him for hundreds of years. What important business could he have? Back then, in order to see me, he would cross half the border in one night. So what important business could he have now? So important that he couldn't even come down to spare me a glance. Is there something important? I don't think there is. General Wan Yi, please be on your way. General Pei Jr. said. From the troop, 2 soldiers of the palace of Minwang approached and pulled Ruo Yi from Wan Yi's person. After it had affectionately wrapped itself back around Zilan's wrist, he gently patted it twice to comfort it. Wan Yi allowed herself to be grabbed by the 2 soldiers, briefly dazed before she suddenly started struggling with force, cursing while pointing to the heavens. Pei Ming, I curse you! This screech was sharp, and Zilan was taken aback, thinking to himself, isn't this cursing the ancestor in front of the descendant? General Pei Jr., however, didn't react at all. He impassively said, Please excuse us. Wan Yi screamed until she went hoarse. I curse you! You best never fall in love with anyone. Otherwise, if that day should come, I'll curse you, just to be like me. To burn with the fire of love incessantly, forever and ever. The fire of love will burn your body and scorch your heart and your insides. Right then, General Pei Jr. greeted Zilan and the others. Excuse us. Please wait a moment. Right then, General Pei Jr. greeted Zilan and the others. He then raised his middle and index finger and lightly pressed them against his temple. This was a spell to activate the spiritual communication array, so he had to be communicating with someone. A moment later, he dropped his hand, clasping it behind him again. He turned to Wan Yi. General Pei wants me to tell you. That's impossible. Wan Yi screeched, I curse you! General Pei Jr. waved his hand again and ordered, take her away. The 2 soldiers carried Wan Yi, who was struggling like crazy, and dragged her off. Zilan spoke up. General Pei Jr., might I ask, how will Wan Yi be handled? Sealed under a mountain, General Pei Jr. replied. To use a mountain as a seal was certainly the usual way the heavenly realm dealt with monsters and ghosts. After a brief moment of hesitation, Zilan continued. General Wan Yi's resentment is quite strong. She couldn't let go of the hatred that stemmed from betraying her kingdom for General Pei. Perhaps sealing isn't the right long-term solution. General Pei Jr., however, only inclined his head. She said she betrayed her kingdom because of General Pei? She certainly did say so, Zilan said, and that it was because of General Pei that she became like this. Whether that's true, though, I don't know. If it must be said that way, it's not altogether wrong, General Pei Jr. said. She did betray her kingdom for General Pei. However, the details might be different from what bystanders might imagine. After she and General Pei separated, in order to keep him, General Wan Yi offered up military intelligence of her own volition. General Pei was unwilling to win unfairly, so he didn't take the offer. Well, now, he never expected the whole I betrayed my kingdom for you thing was actually something like that. Zilan replied. Then when she said both her legs being broken was also because of General Pei, it was... She broke those legs herself. General Pei Jr. answered. Broke them herself? General Pei Jr. replied emotionlessly. General Pei doesn't like forceful women. But General Wan Yi has a strong character, which is why they couldn't be together for long. General Wan Yi couldn't accept it and told General Pei that she was willing to sacrifice for him and change herself. Thus, she ruined her own martial skills and broke her own legs. With that, she basically destroyed her own wings to tie herself to General Pei's side. General Pei didn't abandon her to her own devices and kept her around to take care of her, but he never intended to marry her. General Wang Yi's wish was never fulfilled, and so she killed herself out of resentment, not for anything else, but just so General Pei would be sad. However, pardon my bluntness. The way he spoke had always been polite and overly calm. That would never happen. Zilan rubbed his forehead and didn't speak, thinking to himself, who the heck are these people? General Pei Jr. continued, I don't know the right and wrong of all it either. I only know that General Wang Yi was willing to let go. Things wouldn't have had to be this way. Your Highness, I will take my leave now. Zilan also cupped his hand and set them off. So he'd be like, I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Nanfang commented, weirdos. Zilan thought, he himself was the laughingstock of the three realms, an infamous weirdo, so he'd best not to comment on anyone else. This was something between General Pei and Wang Yi. So for bystanders, there was no point in discussing who was right or wrong. Their sympathies only went out to all 17 of those innocent brides and military officials and sedan drivers who escorted them, but suffered a terrible fate for no reason. Having brought up the subject of the brides, Zilan instantly turned his gaze to look and saw the 17 corpses of the brides had started to show various signs of deterioration. Some had already dissolved into white bones, while some were starting to rot, emitting waves of foul odor. The stench roused the people lying on the ground, and they gradually came to. But when they saw the scene, they jumped in shock and terror once more. Zilan used this opportunity to nag at them to spread the philosophy of good and bad karma, advising them to pray a lot for each of the brides once they went back down the mountain, and to think of a way to contact the families of those brides to come and collect their corpses. He also cautioned that they must never commit the same deeds as those corpse sellers, and they shouldn't commit any wrongdoings. Either, after such a thrilling night, and with the lead instigator gone, no one else dared to speak against Zilan. They had each acknowledged him apprehensively, other than feeling like they had just had a nightmare. Only then did they realize that if they had acted as if possessed. Why were their minds filled only with money, and there were so many dead people around? Thinking back, they all found it horrifying. The night before, everyone was doing the same thing, relying on the fact that their numbers were great and they had a leader, and they all rushed in without thinking. Now that they had harbored fear in their minds, they very earnestly repented and prayed for blessings. The day hadn't yet broken, fearing that there might be wolves and others stirring up trouble. Even though Nanfang had just run a huge circle around the whole mountain, he now had to lead this large group of people back down. He didn't complain, however, and arranged with Zilan to discuss afterward what was to be done with the forest of upside-down corpses. When the bandaged boy woke up, he sat next to Yao Ying's corpse one more, hugging her, not saying a word. And so Zilan also sat down next to him. He spent a while coming up with a script. But just as he was about to speak to comfort him, Zilan suddenly noticed that the boy's head was bleeding. It was as if blood was from the corpse forest, then if it was blood from the corpse forest, then it would have dried. But this blood was still dripping. So it could only be from an injury. Right then, Zilan told him, your head is wounded. Take off your bandage and let me have a look. That boy slowly looked up, and those bloodshot eyes glanced at him like he was scared and hesitant. Zilan smiled gently. Don't be afraid. If there's a wound, then it must be dressed. I promise I won't be scared off by you. The boy hesitated for a moment, then turned around, and circle by circle, he slowly unwrapped the bandages. His movements were very slow, but Zilan waited for him patiently and was already pondering the issues that would come after. This boy for sure can't stay on Mount Yuyan anymore. But where can he go? He can't come back to the heavens with me, and I don't even know where my next meal is coming from. I'll have to think of a reliable way to settle him. And the green goes key wrong. Just then, the boy finished removing the bandages and turned around. And just as Zunlan saw the face in its entirety, he felt like all the blood in his veins had drained completely. All right, so there we go. That was chapter 4 of Heaven's Official Blessing. Mountain Locked Ancient Temple. Oh my god, I've been reading for so long I forgot what part I was reading. Anyway, I never really, to be honest, I never really liked chapter 4. Only because I feel that it was unfair for Wan Yi to get all the blame. Even though I know that she did a bad thing, right? She took out her resentment and her anger at the wrong people and started hurting innocents. I feel that General Pei also didn't get any of the blame, or was like, oh, well, he's a general and he's, fighting wars and that's what happens. But it's like, there was 2 parties involved in that. And I feel that General Pei should have at least, I don't know, gotten a slap on the wrist or something. But it was just something that needs to consider. Anyway, just another crazy day. Anyway, so yeah, what do you think? Do you think that it was fair for Wan Yi to be the only one kind of punished? Or do you think that it was the right thing to do? Or do you think that there was really no right or wrong answers and that they were both to blame and the whole situation could have been avoided? I also did feel really bad for Wan Yi. Because, she died in such a terrible way. And she also didn't deserve to die. Yeah, so basically, Wang Yi didn't really deserve to die that way. She lived a very, well, we don't know much about her life, but I can pretty much guess that it was not great. And so, she should have had a better ending. Honestly, it always makes me want to do a fan fiction where she gets reincarnated and becomes the best god ever in the universe. I might, I might actually write that. But anyway, so that was the end of the chapter. And just want to know what you guys think. Let you, write down your comments down below. Also like, subscribe, and share the channel if you haven't already done so. Just to let you know that on Saturday on the 12th, I'm doing another live stream on the channel from 11 to 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So the live stream is going to be basically us, or me, basically talking about You're My Sky, episode 9, and Not Me, episode, I think 12 would be out by then. So I'll be talking about those 2 episodes. And then while I will be coloring, I have a Yaoi coloring book that I haven't really used. I think I've colored 1 page in full. So, that'll be fun if you like coloring. And if you like BL, then that'll be even better, I guess. So I hope you come to enjoy that. And I hope you also buy Heaven's Official Blessing using my Amazon links down below. Also, Scum Saving Villain System is also volume 2 is also out for pre-order, and so you could get that there as well. So I'll have all the links for you down in the description box. I will also link my new Discord channel. It's free to join. So hopefully you all consider joining. I'm trying to get more engagement and get more community, and also just for you guys to have fun and just to make new friends. I know sometimes in real life it can be pretty difficult to make friends, but you can make internet friends, and those are just as good. Sometimes they can even turn to real life friends. Anyway, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, look, I got a new microphone. So hopefully the audio issues will be fixed. So I hope so. Let me know what you think. Let me know if the audio problems are gone, or if it's like too ugly to be in my video. I actually really like it. But anyway, thanks for joining and hanging out with me. I hope you had a good day, and I will see you later.